I'm super soft-spoken. Everybody, thank you so much for coming out to celebrate my friend with 18 freaking New York Times bestsellers. Jane, oh my God.
Very far away.
I know, I love you so much. Oh my God, touch my boobs. Okay, listen. I usually hate really pretty, smart people, but in your case, I made an exception. Jane is a fantastic human being. Let me tell you something. She gives! Woohoo! And she gives. You think she's making money tonight? No! Not making even less because I don't even have a fucking book to sell. Which, by the way, you better buy this book, damn it, before you leave here. It is so good. And Jane, she was so nice to me. She let me read it before it was in the print. And I said, you got a winner here. I love it. And why is it a winner? She will tell you why. Because it's about what? And it's inspired by what?
It's inspired by you, Lisa.
No, I know it's inspired by you.
It's inspired by friendship, and I am going to tell you about the book. But before I do, I just need to say that Lisa is actually one of my best friends. And when I travel around the country and I say to people, well, you know that Lisa Lampanelli is one of my best friends, everybody goes, what?
Yeah.
It makes no sense to people whatsoever, except it does actually make a lot of sense.
Well, what's good is it shows what a beautiful, smart woman from Westport does when she slums in Fairfield.
And I really love that Lisa is here tonight because this book is about friendship. And, you know, everybody always asks me about the inspiration behind my books. And really, the inspiration behind this book came from me realizing that as a 50-year-old woman, which is, I was 49 or 50 when I started thinking about writing this book, I realized that I was leading a life that was much more isolated than I ever expected. And, you know, some might argue, well, I'm a novelist, I'm an introvert, of course my life is isolated. But actually, when I started talking to friends of mine, the same age, we were all going through the same thing. It kind of feels like there's a pervasive loneliness, and partly I blame technology. I think we're all so busy hiding behind our screens that we're forgetting to really connect on a human level. And by the way, I'm as guilty as everyone because God forbid my phone should ever ring. I look at it in horror, thinking, what's the matter with you? Why can't you text me like a normal
Actually, she's right. I was very flattered. I called her twice in the last couple weeks, and she picked up. And I was in such shock, not because it's her, because nobody picks up their phone anymore. So I was very flattered. I had no idea what to say, and I hung
up. So technology, I think, is really part and parcel of this, and particularly, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm going to be an empty nester soon, and I started to think about connection and friendship. And then my husband, who's here, my husband and I found ourselves with dinner, and every time we sat down for dinner with our favourite people, we'd end up having the same conversation, which was, hey, you know, when the kids leave, why don't we all club together and buy a piece of land somewhere or a farm, and we'll all have like a tiny house, but then we'll have a communal barn with a kitchen and a living room, and we'll all go into what Jung called the afternoon of life with the people that we love most. And everybody got so excited about this idea, I started to think, hey, maybe I should write a novel about this.
I love that.
So that's where the Friends We Keep came from.
Well, what's the greatest thing about that is because she didn't know this about me. I had already, always, for years, had what I call my Golden Girls fantasy. I always, because I don't have a husband, and if I did, I'd fucking kill him, so I don't care. I wanted to move in with 3 old broads, or possibly 2 gays and a woman. And we would have so much fun, like on the Golden Girls. So when I read this book, and that's literally a fantasy I have. Like, I really love the idea of living with people in your own little wings of the house, and you can see each other and say, oh my God. So when you wrote this, I was like, this is my dream come true.
Yeah. And I think if I shared a house, even with the people I love most in the world, somebody's going to be dead within a month,
Oh, yeah.
which is why it's very important to have your own space so you can retreat.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, and it's such an interesting thing about connection, because I finally found the right therapist, because she meets with you for an hour and a half, so that's what I need. And we spend literally half the time it's got to be 3/4 talking about this lack of connection and this loneliness. And it's funny, I always was like, well, just because we're not lonely for a husband or a partner doesn't mean there isn't an alone feeling sometimes. And the more people I talk to, even married people, they totally feel that.
So one of the things I thought about an awful lot while I was writing this book was Brene Brown. Has anyone read Brene Brown? Right, so one of them just wrote Daring Greatly. And Daring Greatly, for those who don't know, is all about shame. And it's all about how we as women particularly, and I think it's humans in general, but particularly as women, we all feel this sense of inadequacy and this sense of shame. And when we meet other women, we're so terrified that they're going to see us as being less than in some way, that we build up these constructs and we present ourselves as perfect. But what happens when you put up the constructs is you're not able to connect. And really we're built for human connection. And I just found myself thinking, and I find myself thinking about that so much, the importance, particularly in an Instagram age where we all look like we have these perfect lives on Instagram. And I have friends who I really love say to me, wow, what are you complaining about? Your life is perfect. Because on Instagram it looks perfect. But what you don't know is that before I've taken that photograph of my kitchen with its immaculately labelled jar, I've shoved 3 piles of crap in the ceiling 6 feet to the right.
Yeah.
So, nothing in my life is perfect. And yet we're also frightened about revealing that. I had a really interesting lunch. I'm sorry,
No, please.
but I had a really interesting lunch the other day with a girl who I've known about, I haven't ever met her, and I found her very intimidating, very beautiful, one of the sort of Westport popular girls, everybody loves her. And we met for lunch and she was like decked head to toe in design gear. And within 10 minutes, she was telling me about some of the problems that she and her husband had and that, financially perhaps things weren't as they could have been. And she was so honest, and I was so moved on 2 levels. First of all, it made me feel that it made me feel connected, and it also made me feel okay about my own stuff, because none of us have. You don't get to this age without having life thrown real hardships at you. I look at the 30-somethings around town with their babies, and I think, gosh, you're so lucky.
And don't worry, they're all hiding in opioid addiction.
Well, that's true.
You're there.
What I did when we moved to Southport, Fairfield, Westport, Stanford, when you move there when you're 37 years old and you have little babies and you think the world is your oyster and everything's going your way, nothing has ever been hard, and all of a sudden you hit 40 and shit hits the fan. Whatever it is, friends start dying, parents start getting ill or aging, and grief and loss and hardship and jobs are lost, and you get to this stage, and I do worry about what technology has done, and that it's made us all pretend to have these perfect lives, and actually the less we focus on the perfect, the more real we are, the more we talk about the hardships that some of us are facing, the more we can connect, as Brene Brown said. When you let constructs go, that's when you connect with people.
Yeah, like when I coach people now and they say, oh, I'm afraid of this with my parents or this, I go, just tell them. Just say, well, I'm afraid what you're going to think of me. And I just applaud Jane because she captures in this book what friendship is actually like. And for her to take the risk to be friends with someone who's physically, emotionally, and mentally as perfect as I am, it's so hard.
I do aspire to be like you.
But it's great too, because vulnerability, I know it's a term everybody's throwing around lately, but really all vulnerability is telling the truth. And I think there's a lot of truth in this book, and that's why I just ate it up. I loved it.
So one of the things, this is my 20th novel. Oh my God, I'm halfway through my 21st novel, which I can't believe. One of the things that I always aim for is an emotional honesty and an emotional resonance. So even if you haven't been through the things that my characters have gone through, you still feel like you could, if you were in their shoes, this is how you might react.
Yeah, and that getting in their shoes, that empathy, is what makes those characters really come alive. Like, I could see myself stepping into each of their shoes, despite gender, despite race, despite anything. So it's really cool that you can write that and put it together.
Thank you. And empathy is a really interesting word that you use, because it's one of the things that I've also been thinking about and was thinking about during the writing of this book, is that when you're hiding behind a screen and you're not having the human connection with people, you're not generating oxytocin. And oxytocin is what creates empathy. And so it really is the human connection that we all need. And I long for the days when we used to sit on the front porch and talk to our neighbours walking by. And I'm all about community and connection.
It's interesting, though, because I always want for my mother's so cute. She's 89. She always talks about, oh, I miss when we would all live on the same street in Bridgeport and we'd go over on a Friday night and play cards and this and that. And now the bitch won't leave her house. I mean, come on. But see, we shut off from that. And I think it's up to us as we get older to go, wait a minute. I might be 80. I might be 75. I might be whatever. But I gotta still put myself out there in a real way.
But why do we shut ourselves off? I mean, I'm really...
Fear of connecting and being seen. At least for me, like, my fear is that people will actually get to know the real me, see I'm repulsive. No, really. Okay, thanks. I'll tell my friend after that. No, but she goes, some people feel like if they're seeing exactly who they are, it's their shame that holds them back. Like, I'm not enough. They're going to find out I yelled at a kid once. Or they're going to find out I parked in a handicap space today, which I did because my mother left her fucking thing in and I had to do it. All right? I had to do it. So there might be some people in this audience who go, that's the real Lisa. We don't like that. And you know what? Then you go, guess what? I'm sorry, then that's not for me, and that's okay. We're not for everybody. But I think
something else about being repulsive.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I think I know you very well, and I think you're no more than 8% repulsive.
Oh my
I also think that actually I laugh that you're a bit repulsive, because you made me die of laughter at lunch today because you were a bit repulsive. But it's flaws that make them interesting, and that's the thing with being a writer. I'm not interested in the dull. I'm interested in people who are a bit selfish or self-absorbed or narcissistic or whatever it is. I'm interested in people who are problematic.
But also, any TV show you watch, whether it's something as benign as This Is Us, or something like Dead to Me on Netflix, or Fleabag, which is the best. People are really
so excited about
it. It just shows that we're all works in progress. And I think the more we walk down the street and look somebody in the eye and just be real, it's really nice. And you feel like, I can actually be friends with that person because they're not afraid of what they're working on.
So in a very subtly professional way, I'm going to bring this round to books again.
Oh, yeah.
No, but I love our chat.
Yeah.
But that's what, as a novelist, I kind of feel that's what I'm doing with my writing. That books offer one of two things. They're either a window into another world or a mirror where you're reflecting your own world. And I think reflecting back the human condition is the greatest thing we can hope to do.
It's huge. And in this book, I just love that they all find themselves in the position. Every one of their stories kind of leads them to take up, this idea of this colony together.
So yeah, and so because it's a novel, these are three people, Evie, Maggie and Topher, and Evie is half Jamaican, half American. She's a former child actress who struggles with food enormously and eating disorders. Maggie is the quintessential English Rose, and Topher is our waspy man from Greenwich, Connecticut, who is struggling with his sexual identity when we meet him. They all meet at university in the 1980s in England, and they become best friends and vow that they're going to be friends forever. But of course, there's that lovely John Lennon quote, when life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So life gets in the way, they get busy with their lives, and they lose touch over the years. And we follow them throughout their lives, but one of them, Evie, I'm giving nothing away, is harbouring a deep, dark secret. And because she can't let the others know, she really withdraws from them. And we follow them throughout their lives until their 30th university reunion. And they haven't seen each other for years, and they all come together again. And within minutes, it's as if no time has passed whatsoever. And they go out for dinner, and by the end of the night, they're fantasizing about living together again. And of course, that fantasy becomes a reality, except there is that deep, dark secret that threatens to derail everything. So,
Sure, and what's great about, I mean, there's such a grain of truth in the fact, just any secret just seems to be keeping us stuck. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really keeps them stunted in their friendship until this comes out. So I just like when we talk about shame and things like that. The only way we can work on our inner shame and not feeling good enough is to tell the secrets. So I love that about your stories, because like, oh, it finally comes out and it makes them closer, you know? Or does it? I don't know.
I will say, years. In fact, this may even have been my first novel, and the ending was not a happy ending. And not that all my endings are happy endings, but they have resolution in some way. But this was an ending where really there was no resolution, and we handed it out to focus groups, and they came back and said, no, we don't like it. We like to know that things are good, and so.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So there's always resolution, and it may not be, you don't necessarily get the everything that you want, but you get enough of it that you can move on and be happy.
Oh, definitely. I remember when I used to watch a movie with my dad or whatever when we were way younger. And I'd go, well, Dad, what just happened at the end? What happened at the end? If it was left open, and he'd go, however you want it to happen. So, but it's good that you tie it up without too tightly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And by the way, the book you're talking about, is that Swapping Lives? That it was unresolved?
No, actually it was Straight Talking, which was my very first novel.
God, it's so good. Okay, because I did not know her. This is years ago. I had highlighted the ending because it was open-ended about does the girl end up with a guy or alone? Because I always fantasize, because I was a serial monogamist from age like 12 to 40. Like, God forbid I'd ever have a date without a guy. So I always fantasized about being alone. I said, ooh, wouldn't that be good? And what I loved about that ending was, oh my God, maybe it's okay to be alone.
Yeah.
So thanks to you, I got a divorce, and I'm happy now.
I really struggle with that because there's still, I think part of the reason why I became a novelist is because I'm the eternal romantic.
You are.
I always want the happy ending. And did anyone see the revival of My Fair Lady at Lincoln Center recently? So it was really wonderful, but they changed the ending.
They did?
Yeah. I agree. She doesn't end up with Henry Higgins, because Henry Higgins is really quite abusive to her. So on the one hand, you want to go, yeah, girl power, she leaves, she walks out. But on the other hand, you're like, oh, but romance.
I know.
And so I always struggle with that. I do, and I know I shouldn't say this in these times, but I do like a happy ending that's, with a partner.
Which is nice. I mean, again, it's a novel. There are enough books out there that are depressing and freaking weird. Put on the news. You want to kill yourself. You read a Jane Green book, you don't want to kill yourself anymore. It's beautiful. And you know what? That's true. Yes. So listen, we're terrifically fascinating. So, we are going to open this up for questions. The only thing I ask of you is you stand up, you give your first name, and you talk nice and loud. Because let me tell you something, women. You want a big voice. You want to be heard. Own your speech. Have a voice. Because I love it when people are loud and proud.
Yeah!
Raise your hand.
Anyone?
Anyone? Here, yes, stand up.
Hello, my name's Andrea.
Hi, Andrea.
Where do you do research for your books? How do you start a book?
So, Andrea, in case you didn't hear, where do I do research for my books? How do I start my books? So I do draw the inspiration from my life, and I always say that writers are terrible magpies. We mine our own lives and the lives of everybody around us. So if you find me later and chat with me, be very careful. There's a very good chance if it's interesting enough, it's going in. I make no apology, I promise I'll disguise it, but it is from life.
Yep, that's good to know. Wow.
Yeah, I bet you wish you hadn't told
I was just going to say,
that.
you're going to start paying for breakfast from now on. Okay, questions? Come on, don't be scared.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
Tell us about the secret of your success in your marriage.
Oh, yeah. Because Ian is fucking hot. No, he is tasty. It's true.
Really love that question because I can talk about the things that are really important to us, and I have to say that marriage is really, really hard work. We went through a very rough patch a few years ago. Some of you will know that I had a little flirtation, but it didn't become anything. It was just a flirtation, and it was just that even the best marriages become pots and pans after a while. And when a very young, attractive author chats you up at a librarian conference, it can turn your head quite a while. But you know what we've come to realise, and we do have an extraordinary marriage, is that the key really to marriage is kindness. It's really very simple. But it's not, we often think it's the kindness of, say, bringing your partner a cup of coffee in bed, which is lovely. And it is that, but more than anything, it's the kindness of attention. And there's a psychologist called John Gottman that my husband and I both adore, and we've both read a lot of his work. And he talks about masters and disasters. He did a huge study that lasted over years where he took a bunch of newlyweds and he studied them over the years. And after a while he found that he could very accurately predict which marriages would last and which marriages would fail. And he could accurately predict within a 90% success rate within 20 minutes, and then it became within 5 minutes. And he said it was actually what he saw was that when couples were together, if one of them made what he called a bid to the other by saying something like, oh, look at that bird outside, look at that painting, the marriages where the other person stopped what they were doing and joined their partner to look, because they recognised it wasn't about the painting or the bird, it was about saying, this is something that I've noticed, therefore it's important to me, so come and join me. Those marriages where the person joined them, those were the marriages that worked. And so I think of it as the kindness of attention. And by the way, I say this as somebody who was buried in her iPhone for sometimes, I'm not kidding, and I know this because I have an app that tells me how many screen hours I do. I think my record may have been 9 hours a day, which is shameful. But we are very mindful. So definitely the success of our marriage, I think, is that we are mindfully kind to each other. In terms of success in life, I really believe a couple of things. The first is that I say to be a success requires a PhD, but in my world, I made this up by the way, so you can use this credit. In my world, a PhD is persistence, humility, and discipline. And persistence because there will always be walls, there will always be stumbling blocks, and you have to have the persistence to keep going. Humility because, especially as a writer, it is so easy to think, well, these are my words, and nobody can change them. But in my case, I surround myself with people I really trust, and when they tell me that a book is not very good, or I need to rewrite, I trust them and I change it. And discipline, because being a success at anything requires a tremendous amount of work. So I say a PhD. And the other thing I would say is that my every day is punctuated by periods of peacefulness. So however crazy my day, however much I'm running, whether I'm on tour, and there are parts of every day that are just for me, where I can kind of recharge, take stock, and breathe. So those are my...
And you know what I think too? When I give workshops and things, and you talk about taking those moments for peace and self-care, it sounds like it's so hard, but it could be literally 5 minutes going outside and breathing the air. It could be 10 minutes doing something. We all think, we're afraid to do self-care because we think it requires a big program, and oh my God, I gotta do yoga, or I gotta do a meditation for an hour, if not, I'm a huge failure. If you would be a huge failure for that, it's not true. That's why Headspace has an app where it's 10-minute meditations. So I love that you said the stepping out just for that peace, and it doesn't have to be, oh my God, I didn't do my peace today, because that's what we do to ourselves. Secondly, I would like to build on the thing about Ing being a hot piece of ass. No, I enjoy them so much as a couple, and I'll tell you why. I am disgusted when I'm out with a couple and they don't look like they care about each other, when they're just going through the motions, when they're not gentlemanly and ladylike towards each other. Now, me, I'm emotionally and vaginally shut down. However, I will say, honestly from my heart, when I see Ian and Jane together, I say to myself, okay, there's something nice to shoot for. It's a nice little formula they got going. So I thank you for giving us some hope. God bless you.
I'm so glad that we can do that. I'm going to add a little bit to the story of when we were going through the hard time and I had my little flirtation with the young handsome author. But actually, I told the story for the Moth. I don't know whether anyone listens to the Moth, but I told the story for the Moth. And in fact, the young handsome author, we lost touch for a while, and then suddenly my publisher decided to send me to LA for an event, and I thought, oh, LA. Young handsome author is in LA, and so I went. I got in touch with the author, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be in LA on September 4th. Should we get together?" And he went, "Yeah, great. Let's make a plan." And so I went to find my husband in his office and said, "Darling, I'm going to LA on September 4th." He went, "September 4th? I don't think so." I went, "Excuse me?" And he said, "September 4th, you're going nowhere on September 4th." And I was outraged. "You can't tell me what to do." He said, "Jane, September 4th is my birthday." I felt horrible. Not only had I forgotten my husband's birthday, I was planning on spending it flirting my husband. So anyway, my husband then said, "Hey, we can make a weekend of it." So my husband gate crashed my date with an author, and we arranged to meet him for brunch, the three of us. It was a happy threesome. The three of us met for brunch, and I was very excited, and we got there, and my date was sitting outside the restaurant with his sleeves rolled up and these aviator sunglasses on, and he looked incredibly handsome. And we went inside, and we sat down at the table, and I said nothing. I couldn't get a word in edgewise because my husband and the author were like, and then at one point the author absolutely true. He excused himself to go to the bathroom, and my husband looked at me and said, "Oh my God, he's the most handsome man I've ever seen." So I think one of the things that bonds us together is that we have the same taste in life.
That's great. Okay, who else? A couple more?
Yes.
Hi, Amy. So Jane, you mentioned briefly about being an empty nester soon. Do you think that's going to change the way you're writing, or what you're writing about, or evolving your home life? Is it going to be reflected in your work?
So the question from Amy is, will becoming an empty nester change what I'm writing about? You know what's really interesting is that my books have always charted the course of my life, but then a year ago I changed agents, and I moved to a new agent in LA, And he's also a screenwriter, and he happens to, did I mention this already? I can't remember. He happens to have, he wrote the screenplays for Shaft and Armageddon, and he's also writing the next 4 Avatar movies. So he's a really massively accomplished screenwriter. And his whole thing is publishing is suffering, and so we have to do projects that have real life outside of just books, so film and TV. And to that end, we storyline the new book together, and there are no more suburban housewives from Westport. I'm really sorry. But the new book is something entirely different, and it's actually the story, it's all set in Silicon Valley, and it's the story of the 29-year-old daughter of a Steve Jobs-like tech tycoon who has spent her life trying to please her difficult, mercurial, genius father and trying to gain his love and respect. And when he dies, he leaves her the company, and it's that story, and it's so very different. And I think this may be, first of all, I'm loving it. I feel like it has given me a new energy and purpose. I'm loving the writing of this book. And it's also fascinating because I've really stepped out of my comfort zone. I'm writing about things I know nothing about, and I strongly suspect that my future books are not going. I think we've left suburban housewives behind. I'm so sorry. I would love to continue writing about us, but I need to expand.
Was that scary at first? Because, I mean, really stepping out of your comfort zone is what we all say we should do,
Yeah.
but then find it hard to do.
Yeah.
So was it like, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, it's scary, and there are parts of it, there are scenes that are set in the tech world in Silicon Valley, and this is not a world I know. I have no experience, so I'm making it up as I go along. I don't know, and I'll get people to proofread it.
Sure,
afterwards and make
but you know what I think is
correct.
great about Jane too? Jane obviously likes, beautiful outfits. She figures out she's going to put a scene in this book that takes place in Morocco. So she gets to write off a trip to Morocco.
And not only that, I have to tell you the story of my fantastic caftan, which is my husband and I went to Morocco to research. And while we were there, we met this incredible man who became our guide, and he was this very erudite, eloquent, brilliant man. And his daughter is a seamstress, is a fashion designer, and we became great friends with him. He was just a wonderful man. And we left Morocco and we came home, and about 6 weeks later, this caftan arrived with another one his daughter had made, and he just sent them as a gift. So extraordinary. And I actually wrote a piece about this recently for an English magazine about the kindness of strangers, and I really feel, kindness is really the theme throughout our life. And by the way, I'm not always kind. I'm probably 88% kind, and 12% I'm a horror. We all have bad days, but it is, that kind of kindness and generosity, we're living in pretty scary times, and it really is, it's human connection, and it's kindness that...
See, it all comes back to connection,
Yes,
really.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't have known what you liked or that you were open to him unless you were open and didn't put that wall up. Because the walls are really, it's just terrible. It doesn't advance anything, So one last question. Yes, Miss.
Hi, my name is Julie.
Hi, Julie.
And I was curious about your connection or thinking about Brene Brown. I know that her TED Talk is like the second most watched TED Talk ever about vulnerability. And what is your connection with her, and what resonated?
Really, it's just, I stumbled upon the TED Talk a few years ago and then bought Daring Greatly, and it really is, it is the notion of vulnerability, which I think can be so frightening for so many of us, and particularly living out here. I think suburban life is really, really hard because we all feel that everybody else has a little bit more than we do. But that's, we're all struggling, and I just think it really touched home that her whole thing about allowing our vulnerabilities to show through. What do you think
Yeah,
about
I
that?
love it. I love openness. I always told my publicist, you have the easiest job in the world. You'll never find anything online about me that I haven't already said. I said, you'll never find naked pictures or I would have told you about it. And I think it's like just us being who we are. But I think who we really are is that those qualities, those vulnerable qualities that we're born with. So if you have to I have the people in the workshops do this sometimes. I'm like, okay, get to your wife, mother, et cetera, et cetera. What qualities were you born with if you're trying to figure out the authentic you? It's like kindness, generosity. That's what you lead with. And it's hard. Like if you're in freaking Stop and Shop or you stop to go to Whole Foods, big shots. Organic. I love pesticides, just saying.
So I want to say something else about that. This is really, one of the other things I did was a few years ago I brought out a cookbook because I describe myself as a slightly trained chef. I did a 2-month course at the French Culinary Institute, but I really love cooking. But it's not really about the cooking; it's about the feeding of people. And Martha Stewart, we all love Martha Stewart, and she's a local, and I have a particular kinship with her. She and my mother-in-law, who's here, started a catering company together in Westport 300 years ago, right? So she's an incredible woman because she made it acceptable she made the domestic arts acceptable. But what she also brought to the picture was a level of perfectionism that I think has been enormously intimidating. And I think she's an extraordinary woman, but I also think that's the kind of anti-vulnerability. It's like we all have to entertain perfectly. And actually the reason I wrote the cookbook was that I don't really care about food. I mean, I like food, but it's not about food. When people come to my house for dinner, I don't care what I say. I want them to, as the minute they cross the threshold of my home, I want them to feel nurtured and safe and warm. And I want to sit them at my table and feed them the kinds of food that make them feel loved.
Yeah.
And I really hope that it is cyclical and it goes to all this perfectionism that we're talking about in vulnerability, that actually the more human we are, the more we realise it isn't about laying the perfect table or baking the perfect cake or creating the perfect meal. It's about people are always going to, is it a Margaret Mead quote? People will always remember how you make them feel. And that is what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about, if you do this, great, but it's not about baking your own lady fingers for a tiramisu. Like, buy them, grow up. But I decided a couple months ago, I was driving home, I do these storytelling shows that I really love about food and body image, because that's my big issue. So I do this show in Plattsburgh, New York, and I'm driving down, and for some reason I got that thing of achieve again. Achieve, like I haven't done enough. And I go, I need a TED Talk. And guess what happened? It was the best shift in the world. I go, why do you need a TED Talk? To become accepted, to impress other people. And I said, what would impress me? And guess what? I said, that's why I serve all my company on paper plates. And I eat off good china by myself, but I make it real nice. She's been over. But I can't care about impressing. And I think that's a roadblock to vulnerability. So I say, give your company paper plates, which, by the way, is a fantastic freaking idea for a TED Talk, so I'll probably have to do it.
And I also recently discovered the joys of potluck.
Oh, yeah, tell people to bring stuff.
Now, yeah.
And by the way, ladies, look at you. Look at me, all of you. I just want to say one thing. Stop asking me if you could bring fruit for dessert. If you cannot see your way around a freaking piece of cake, get out of my freaking house. What is this fruit? health. Enjoy yourself. And by the way, real quick, that's another thing I'd love to mention about Jane's book, that it resonated with me. She talks, this girl, Evie, had dealt with obesity, weight loss, bulimia, anorexia, and she's right, you must have done a lot of research about it because you nailed it. And I said, finally, a book that gets it, that gets what we go through with weight and food and body image. And that's half the reason I love this book. So thank you for doing that. Why did you think that was important to do?
I think it just, I mean, I've always struggled with food, and I think so many of us have struggles, you know, whatever it's with, but you know, food can be a real hot button issue for so many of us. So I've explored, from Jemima J onwards, I've always explored that. But I'm here to sign books. I would love to sign your books. And I would also like to say that if you take this book home and you read it, I would love you to post reviews, everyone. Amazon reviews, post those reviews, tell your friends. If you take this book home and you hate it, just shh.